Okay, before we start, we would like to do our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge the land on which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, whose culture has now been erased forever. We also acknowledge the land of Ukta-Unguk as the unceded traditional territory of the Beothuk and the Mi'kmaq. And we acknowledge Labrador as the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Innu, of Nitasinun, and Inuit of Nunatsiavut, and the Inuit of Nunatukavut. We recognize all First Peoples who are here before us, those who live with us now, and the 7 generations to come. As First Peoples have done since time immemorial, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to respect the cultures, ceremonies, and traditions of all who call it home. As we open our hearts and minds to the past, we commit ourselves to working in a spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all. So, ageism is how we think, how we feel, and how we act towards others or oneself based on age. It is the most tolerated form of social discrimination in Canada. And in the case of seniors, it is suggested that ageism dehumanizes older people and could contribute to making violence against them more permissible. So we asked participants when you all registered we wanted to know 5 things, and these are the results of your answers. So our first question was, do you know what ageism is? 83% of you said yes, 12% of you said no, and 5% of you said did not know. Our next question was, has anyone ever told you that you don't look your age? 97% of you said yes, while 3% of you said no. We also asked the question, can ageism affect your health? 88% of you said yes, and 12% of you said you did not know. Our fourth question was, can ageism lead to elder abuse? 83% of you said yes, while 17% of you said you did not know. And our last question is, does ageism cost society? 76% of you said yes, while 24% of you said you did not know. So now I'd like to introduce to you Meg Viss, our special guest for today. Meg Viss was born in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and grew up in Montreal and Toronto. In 1995, she moved to Newfoundland and Labrador and quickly found her heart home. Meg has always been drawn to the people in her life. This became a calling when her mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and her father, with his own medical file several inches deep, became primary caregiver for the love of his life. For 14 years, Meg jumped in as backup for her mother and, when required, primary caregiver for her father. At times, she found it difficult, frustrating, and expensive, but it was also the most rewarding and beautiful experience of her life. Meg discovered her passion for older persons, their perseverance, irreverence, stubbornness, wisdom, courage, and grace, just like everyone else in the world. She also learned to never underestimate older adults. Meg volunteers with us at SeniorsNL as a peer support volunteer for our information and referral line, and we are so happy to have her as a volunteer with our organization, and so happy to have you, Meg, present today.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and let you share your screen.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Okay, feel free. Okay, can everybody see okay? All good? Excellent. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Fantastic. Okay, good. Thank you, Kelly, for that. And I'm really glad to be here to talk about ageism. It also occurs to me I need to supply you with a new picture and bio. I've never heard that read to myself, and that's going to change. Ageism is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, but I think it should be near and dear to virtually everyone's heart, because the reality is that we, much like most isms, we do not realize the extent to which we are excluding people from society and valuing them. So I'm just going to walk you through I'm going to walk you through a short presentation, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm spattering 3 videos into this. So I'm very much hoping that you guys can hear them. And I'm just going to start off with the first one with no comment, and it's very short. So let me just grab that one.
You might want to turn up your volume, participants.
Okay. That's 2. Thank y'all. Can you see the presentation? Perfect. Okay, so the things that I want to, the things I'm going to walk you through is, most of you said you know what ageism is. I'm still going to go through a definition of it. It is a definition that the World Health Organization put together when they put together their global report on ageism. I'm also going to talk about a little bit of context with regards to ageism, which will also include some Newfoundland context. Talk a little bit about how ageism actually hurts people, walking a mile in the shoes of people who are on the receiving end of ageism. Specifically dive a little bit into ageism and its impact on healthcare. Also elder abuse, the question, I know that we had that question in there for you as well. And the workplace, because probably a lot of people who are on this call are either in a workplace or going to be in a workplace. And there's a couple of pages specifically on questions an organization, the employees of an organization can ask themselves is it an ageist organization, and what could be done about that? Lastly, ending on don't be ageist, and a number of resources. So just a bunch of links that when you get the presentation, you'll have access to. So in terms of the World Health Organization's from their global report on ageism definition is a 3-parter. Number 1, like every other ism, is stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. And the easy way to remember those things is stereotypes are how we think, prejudice is how we feel, and discrimination is how we act. And it is how these 3 things together are directed towards others or oneself, because ageism can eat away, much like every other ism, at one's own sense of self-worth as well. I'm just going to move you. Ageism comes up or arises when age is, and the other thing too, just to be clear, is that ageism from the World Health Organization's perspective in their global report is that it's age for seniors or older persons, or whatever word the world and others are going to land on, and the youth. So we're just going to be talking right now about the seniors. Ageism arises when age is used to categorize and divide people in a way that leads to harm, being disadvantaged, and having injustice, but probably most importantly, eroding solidarity across generations. As soon as community is divided, it works against itself and against each other. And that's probably one of the, I think personally, the most painful aspects of any ism, and especially in this conversation, ageism. The term ageism was coined in 1969. And a guy named Robert Neil Butler used it to describe discrimination against seniors, patterned on what was more common than sexism and racism. In 2021, the World Health Organization released their global report on ageism. So that has, at a minimum, allowed 50 more years to allow ageism to take root and live in the context of what we think, act, feel, say, and do. So ageism is not new. And in many ways, it's having significant impacts already. This is a Referral report on ageism conducted by Leger Marketing in 2012. So that's a number of years ago. Ageism is one of the most tolerated forms of social discrimination in Canada. Some of this is a little hard to believe. 80% of Canadians believe people over 75 are seen as less important and more ignored than younger generations. I'm going to say that one again. 80% of Canadians think that anybody over the age of 75 is less important and thereby more ignored than younger generations. Still in the realm of 71% of Canadians, a number that is significant, a little mind-blowing. Canadian society values younger generations more than older generations. As I go through this presentation, if you are 55 plus, and if you are younger, think about your interactions with others and think about, have you ever in your experiences felt this way, acted this way, or seen others do it as well? 60% of people over 66 say they have been treated unfairly because of their age. 30% of seniors say they face discrimination from healthcare professionals and the healthcare system because of their age. 21% of Canadians say older Canadians are a burden on society, AKA no value. I'm going to pop up to the 30% of seniors who say they face discrimination. And Kelly talked about some of the time that I spent with my aging parents. I was living in Nova Scotia, Newfoundland at the time, and they were in Ontario. So there was a lot of tracking back and forth. And a lot of the visits were times when one or both of them were in the hospital. And I can tell you, in my own experience, how alive and well that is. Lying in a bed with gray hair and not moving means you are not getting care. Someone else screaming younger, cute, or whatever, but literally what I learned from that experience is that most people over a certain age should have a patient advocate with them in the hospital. The reality is that sometimes they're not willing to ask questions. There's a generation of people who believe that the doctors are always right, and or they are not the first priority on the floor. And having someone with you who can ask questions for you, ask you if this is what you want, and make sure that you're being respected and looked after in that environment, I can tell you in my own personal opinion, is vital. Today, everywhere. Ageism, oh, I did that one, sorry, up and down. So Newfoundland's a perfect storm for ageism. We are aging 4 times faster than the rest of Canada. There's a bunch of reasons for that. We have a longer life expectancy than Canada. We have the youngest baby boomer, the elephant in the snake, is 57 years old. And that's the youngest. That means the snake is, the elephant is already in the snake. We have the lowest fertility rate in the country, and we have the highest rates of out-migration, particularly of people of childbearing years. Thereby, our population is moving to Ontario and other places. So in 1951, as you can see in that chart, people 65 plus in Newfoundland were 6.5% of the population, and 0 to 4, as you can see, was significant and the largest. In 2026, that number has changed from 6.5% to 26.6, and it's growing. Ageism is, I believe ageism, I call it sneaky, and it pervades institutions, it pervades systems and sectors of society in ways that people don't even realize, and thereby, I think, in many cases, are being passively ageist, not necessarily actively ageist. These institutions and sectors include the healthcare and social care, the media, which we know how invasive that is, and the legal system, and that's a big one. Older adults tend to be excluded. This one is a kind of interesting one for probably a number of reasons, whether it's they don't want to participate, they don't know how to participate, or technology prevents them from participating, or they're not asked. Older adults tend to be excluded from research and data collection efforts. What this means is that their voices, their needs, are not included in the statistics and the data that policies, aka laws, are based on. So they are having no input to some of those things, which is, I think, a little bit frightening. Yeah, you can go down now. So I'm going to share with you this video. It will have context on the other side of it. It's about 7 minutes long. And it has a lot of information, but it has a lot of really good information. So I hope you can hear it. And I'm just going to stop sharing this screen, jump over to that screen.
Yeah, Meg, you can put your speakers close to your computer.
I'm going to hang my speakers right over the top of this computer when my mouse decides it wants to work. Whoops, shit. Darn, I mean. Hang on. Oh, apologies. It appears that I grabbed the wrong screen. There we go. There we go. Enjoy.
What if I told you there's a simple way you could add 7.5 years to your life? A procedure that doesn't cost a thing and doesn't involve doing anything difficult or unpleasant. Well, I'm happy to report that this miracle treatment exists, and you can start doing it right away, even before you finished watching this video. It's backed by science, it's totally safe, and it's all in your mind. Here's the secret. Are you ready? You need to think positively about aging. Really, that's it. Think good thoughts about getting old. Yale professor Becca Levy has shown that people with a positive attitude towards aging live on average 7.5 years longer than those with a negative attitude. And they often feel younger as well.
In our study, in the Irish longitudinal study on aging, where we looked at aging perceptions and coupled those measures with objective brain health and physical measures, we found that many people had a positive attitude. They consider themselves younger than their chronological age. Maybe somebody of 60, 65 would say, but I feel 40.
So what's stopping us from feeling good about aging? Ageism. And right here, I want to make a distinction about aging versus ageism. Aging is normal. It's a fact of nature. All of us are aging all the time. Are you aging? Great, that means you're alive. On the other hand, there's nothing natural about ageism. Ageism, when you discriminate against people just because of how old they are, that's a kind of social sickness. We shouldn't try to fight aging, and we can't anyhow. We can and should fight ageism. when does ageism begin seeping into our psyches? It starts early. From the time we're little kids, we're bombarded by the message that old age is just awful. Old people are depicted as fools, creeps, monsters. Who'd want to end up like that? Yuck. This horror continues as we age, when we do everything we can to try to keep looking young. Except that when we actually get to old age, it's usually a lot nicer than we expected. Studies show that people at either end of the age spectrum tend to be happier than those in the middle. Behold the U-curve of happiness. Another benefit of old age is that we tend to get wiser.
One of the things that's beautiful about wisdom is you're able to know what's important and what's not. You're able to see what's valuable, what's central, what gets you where you need to be, and what is peripheral. And younger people have a much harder time. All of us in our world, it's so busy. We've got so many distractions. Everyone's telling us that everything's important at once. If you want to cut through that and get to the real meaning, ask somebody older.
In our brain, wisdom builds up in the semantic appraisal network, which you could call the wisdom network.
It's connecting an area of the brain, that's the anterior temporal lobes, that seems to help us access knowledge. There's another part of the network, some areas in what we call the orbitofrontal cortex, which is sort of right behind our eyes and up above a little bit. That area is involved in making evaluations, and those are very tightly connected. And then the amygdala is in there too. Amygdala helps us immediately notice when we've made an evaluation that's personally relevant to us. There could be a punishment or a reward here. We want to sit up and take notice and maybe behave differently.
Old age and the wisdom it brings doesn't just help guide our behavior. It may even have been responsible for the survival of the human race. Of all the animals in the world, only humans and a couple kinds of whales tend to live for many years past their reproductive age. So why all these extra years? One possible answer comes from the grandparent hypothesis. One advantage humans may have had over other animals is that with our extra years of life, we could have 3 generations living together. So while the parents went out to get some food, the grandparents could babysit their grandchildren.
The idea is that these old people can provide subsidies in terms of calories, food, or protection, or more interesting, knowledge, cultural knowledge that they can pass on via language to their younger kin, meaning their grandchildren and their children and their nieces and so forth. And because these young individuals are related to them, by definition, they have a higher chance of sharing the same genes.
For centuries, people have searched for the fountain of youth, when it turns out that all along, we had the fountain of old age. At this point, some of my younger viewers may be thinking, well, Josh, being old sounds great. How can I become an old person? And my answer is, be patient and take good care of yourself, which means joining the fight against ageism. Because ageism isn't just an attack on others, it's an attack on ourselves. Ageism is the only universal prejudice. If we live long enough, we'll all have a chance to suffer from it. So when we think bad thoughts about older people, we're also being biased against our future selves. So how do we make the transition to an age without ageism? We can start by making sure that everyone has something meaningful to work for, even after they stop working.
You know, the blue zones, the areas of the world where populations live oldest, one of the things they have in common is purpose. That as people get older, they still have purpose. There are always needs. There's need everywhere in society, and everybody can contribute to helping with those needs. Everybody.
So let's learn to age without ageism. We'll be healthier, we'll live longer, we'll love ourselves at every stage of our life, and we'll be better equipped to succeed in an increasingly complex, even contradictory world that requires us all to depend on one another. Let's treat our future selves with kindness and compassion. And then, while we're at it, let's do the same for everyone else.
Okay, hang on one sec now. just need to shut that down. Okay, apologies. Okay, I just need. Wait. Stop sharing screen. Okay, well, it stopped itself. There you go. Okay. Citizen brain. Thank you. I love that video. Can you hear me okay? I know it was long. I apologize for that, but I think it was excellent. I think it made a number of really good points. And a couple of the points that I really loved about that video is the concept of future self and the idea that anything that we may be thinking, feeling, or acting towards people who are older is in fact just us creating even more ageism for our future selves. And we will eventually have to deal with it, every single one of us. The other part that I loved about it was the idea of purpose, and thinking about people from that perspective, as opposed to what is their value. The question, I think, should be what is their purpose? And that was brought home to me on a personal level by a friend's father who was in a long-term care home. And we were having a conversation. He was a very vibrant man, a carpenter, built a number of houses, raised a large family, et cetera. And now he's in a long-term care home. And he had a twinkle in his eye, but the twinkle was fading. And I asked him, you know, what is the thing that is most difficult about being here? And he said, I have no purpose. I'll just leave that thought with you. It was very powerful. Okay. So building on the video itself, ageism does hurt. It can actually shorten lives. It can create poor health, both physically and mentally. It also can slow down a recovery from an illness, from surgery, from anything that from a fall. They always say as we get older that a game changer is when someone falls and breaks their hips. It's not a game changer so much if you're not dealing with ageism, because your healing is stronger. It also affects the decline from a cognitive point of view much more quickly, and that I can attest to. It can reduce the quality of life, increase social isolation and loneliness. And so now let's think about COVID. Because prior to COVID, that was a reality prior to COVID for seniors. Maybe not one that was on the radar screen of most people, but the reality is that social isolation and loneliness can also reduce the quality of life and the length of life. And that lived before COVID, and COVID put it on steroids. And the other thing too, with regards to ageism, is that it restricts people's ability to express their sexuality. And the reality is that people are sexual beings, no matter what your age is, and everyone has their own right to that, and an ability to express that however they wish. But ageism restricts that ability, and also the ability to express your sexuality in terms of LGBTQ+S2, the acronym is larger than I am. There is an increased risk of violence and abuse as ageism grows. There's an increased risk of financial insecurity and poverty. And the COVID I've already talked about. And then there's ageism on steroids. So now take ageism and intersect it with sexism, ableism, and racism. These two people are the same age in this picture. Which one of them, in your view, might experience more ageism? And if you are the person on the right, then the effect of ageism on your life is stronger, and all of the negative effects that go with it. In terms of ageism and healthcare, It can lead to shorter lifespans, which we've talked about, poorer physical and mental health, cognitive decline, and slower recovery. COVID-19, long before COVID-19, but COVID-19 has proven to us that there is pervasive ageism in society and healthcare systems. So what happened in Ontario, for example, wasn't just politics and decisions that were made from a commerce or economy perspective. It was that it's ageism that allows society to make decisions about the wellness and where people should live when they age and how cultures should handle aging. And then by putting all of those people into longer term care homes, for example, because there's so many reasons that happens. It was a crime, frankly, what happened there with regards to seniors in long-term care in COVID in Ontario, but it wasn't restricted to only there, but it was such a huge example of what is possible to happen in that case. The good news is the inequities based on age relation are coming to international attention and discourse. And again, I won't get into COVID again, because I'm sure we're all sick of it. Ageism and elder abuse. So the World Health Organization, they haven't noticed empirical evidence for the link, they noticed empirical evidence, but it's limited. But there is much discussion about the fact that ageism has the potential to increase the risk of violence being perpetrated against older people. A global review of this prevalence confirmed 1 in 6 adults are victims of abuse. The abuse is psychological, financial, neglect, physical, and/or sexual abuse. And the challenge with ageism is that these ageist stereotypes can contribute to making violence against seniors or older persons more permissible. And that's where the thin edge of the wedge with ageism and elder abuse lies, is that it is more permissible to act that way against someone who's older, who is deemed less valuable. In the workplace, there was some research that was done at New York University. They spoke to their workers, and these people openly opposed racism and sexism, but they were still prejudiced against older workers. And the younger the employees were, the more likely they were to be ageist in their views on older workers. Scary. A survey done by the American Association of Retired Persons said that 78% of older workers saw or experienced age discrimination in the workplace in 2020. In 2018, 2 years before that, it was 61%. That is a scary jump in numbers. There was a recruitment firm that surveyed some business leaders, and 81% said they believed age was a concern in the hiring process. Let me go back for a sec. The question I would ask each of you, particularly anybody who's, I'm going to say 40 plus, but possibly, let's say 50 plus, is think about your own work environment, your own work situation. Think about if your job, for example, through COVID, yes, I brought it up again, your job changes. Perhaps it won't go back to what it was before, and you're thinking, but I still need to work. Have you thought about if it's going to be more challenging for you to find work than someone who is younger? I came across this and I thought it was great. And I think it's something that every organization and employees in organizations, a good list of questions to ask yourselves about whether the organization is ageist, and perhaps ways to, if the answer is yes, address that. So at a high, and and to be fair, not a lot of organizations, many places where people work, do not have an HR department, let alone an HR person. So this is a requirement of organizations to get together with employees, regardless of HR. This is not an HR problem. This is a community problem. This is a world problem. So ask yourselves, and the onus is on all of us, do we, or the company I work for, recruit and hire from all age groups fairly? Does compensation consider the fact that the population is aging? Or, and this is a common one, do we want to get the expensive employees out so we can reduce our costs? Seniors are expensive, apparently. Do we provide opportunities for training and development for all age groups, or only to the young and up and comers? Do we embrace a flexible work environment? For example, flexibility for a youth maybe to go take a course or have a baby or take parental leave. A middle-aged worker may need to take care of some medical needs of their own, or perhaps to look after an aging parent. How do we determine who to let go when we're downsizing? And this is a common one. Who's retiring soon? Do we honor seasoned employees? You can see at the lunch table, social outings, how meetings are organized. Are we honoring these people in these environments? Do we talk about retirement in terms of gone, or in terms of a gradual approach from full-time to part-time, which may be, and even to have that conversation because perhaps that's what someone wants and you value that individual. Does your employer go to employment sites that cater to an older workforce? Or do they just go to LinkedIn? Do we make assumptions that older workers can't grasp changing technology? I think the answer on that one would be a fair yes. How well do we train HR teams, our managers, our leaders, and eliminate age assumption practices? Anyways, I think it's a good list. I think that there's more lists out there, but the key point for me on this one is this is not HR's job. This is everyone's job within a place that they work to change a culture. So speaking of changing cultures, this is another video. It's only 4 minutes long, but it's my favorite one. So I'm going to try and do a better job of sharing that with you now. Stop. Share. Seriously, stop. Share. There we go. And there you go.
There, that's for Mark. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. Just tell us your first name and your age.
My real age?
My name is Paolo. I'm 25 years old.
My name is Daniela, and I'm 19.
24, 35.
31, 33,
I'm 26 years old.
What age do you consider to be old?
Late 40s.
maybe 50.
I feel like 30s and new 20s. So I'd say like 40 is old. I'd probably say 50s.
I'd like you to show me how an old person would cross the street. Show me how an old person would send a text message. How might an old person do a push-up? What about jumping jacks? Okay, hang on. There's someone I want you to meet.
Hello, I'm Birch. I'm 66.
I am Daphne, and I'm 68.
I'm D and I'm 55.
George Pathfinder, 75.
My name's Parvati. I'm 70. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. We're going to give you about 2 minutes to teach each other something that you are good at. I can teach you a jump that I do.
Okay, please.
Both of your legs go up and your arm goes up and your left arm goes like this out. Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Lift. 1, 2, 3. And bring it to your heart. And bring it to your heart. At the head in. Yeah. You want to try to get your balance. And raise up. Now, bring your legs and your feet up. It's hard, right?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. So when you come out, turn. Either way, you go back to that place.
Over. Now forward. Over. Yeah.
Square like this, and give me a hook. Hook. Jab, cross. And then we'll go like this. Okay? 1, 2, 3.
Now, what age might you consider to be old? Probably 80 or 90. He could just do everything that I told him to do. An age that I would consider to be old now might be 100. Do you remember what you said?
Yeah, I said in the 50s. I thought that would be okay. But when I thought about it, like.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
It really changed my thinking of what old is. You've taught me something today. Clearly, there's no way she's old, you know?
No, from today, hey, I don't look at age.
At my age, I feel like I did when I was in my 20s.
There's so many things that I still want to do. There's so many things that I can do. As long as I'm growing and learning, then age doesn't matter.
When people start stopping, that's when they start getting old.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Daphne. It was great meeting you. How long have you been doing this? Is this a new skill?
40 years.
Stop sharing. Share. Okay, so I'm gonna end on don't be ageist, and I'm hoping that I haven't come across in a way that's wagging my finger too much. But be acutely aware of how you're thinking, how you're feeling, and what you're doing when you are with someone who is older.